Monday, July 13th. I'm going to call the executive cabinet meeting for the Board of County Commissioners to order. Let the record reflect we have our both Commissioners Cooney and Kearns present, as well as our senior management team. We are waiting to be joined by Tony Hall and Cindy Wendell. They're not online yet. So in the meantime, I will bring Commissioner Cooney and Kearns up to speed with the conversation that I had late last, I think Friday of last week. The mayor wanted to add to our agenda a CARES funding request for a shelter in place to replace the facility that they have over at the fairgrounds, and wanted to do a presentation today. I requested that they get us the information first and let us take a look at it, and that we would have the conversation next Monday, as opposed to trying to jam it in for this Monday, since it was such a short window of time, and I didn't want any one of us to feel like we were being pressured or anything else and stuff. So we'll have that conversation with the mayor of City of Spokane, and I believe the mayor for Spokane Valley next week to talk about what if anything the board might want to do in that regard. So I see that we're joined by Mr. Hall. Good morning, Tony. And then the only other person we're waiting for is Cindy Wendell, and I don't see her online. Tony, is this something that you have enough information on that you can lead us through, or are we basically looking for, there she is, never mind. Good morning, Cindy.
Morning. Hi, everybody.
So, so you're the first on the agenda. We've already started the meeting, so the floor is yours.
Wonderful. I just wanted to see if you all received our PowerPoint, and I don't know if Gina's going to share the screen or if you'd like me to do that. And I can, let me pull this up.
If you have it, you can share the screen.
Okay, perfect.
You're talking about the Open Together?
Yes.
That's the other one. I just put it on the Teams.
Okay. Perfect.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Make sure that I've got the right one open here, and I'll share this with you. Okay. Let me know, make sure everybody can see this.
Yep.
Great. First of all, I wanted to thank you again, commissioners, very much for the commitment you've made to the community. The feedback we've received has been extraordinary. We had no idea the positive, really in programs like this, there's always opportunities for improvement. There's always things, you learn. But in general, in all the projects that I've managed, this one really ranks as one of the most positive that we've ever done as far as the amount of reach that we were able to get with businesses up towards of 3,000. And I'll share this other screen here with some data points for you. And just what the businesses in your community are saying and needing from you to get through this COVID crisis. This is definitely, I think, an investment that has a fantastic return in many ways. So as far as the number of pieces you can see on this, as a data point, we did deliver quite a bit of PPE to our local businesses. We still have supply left, and we'll go over that here in a little bit of what the plan is going forward. But as far as a review of the event, just wanted you to know to look at a few key things. How much was distributed to how many businesses, how many employees. This was workplace focused for us. So it was really to stand up the safety of the workplace and the employees. So through those businesses, we anticipate that they were able to help supply over 32,000 of the county employees, not county employees, excuse me, but employees in your county with PPE. 830 plus hours were volunteered through community partners. That is not including the FTE from the county, GSI, United Way, and other partners. That is just purely volunteer hours. And then we look at FTE that was designated, and we're upwards of almost 400 hours. Probably that was just considering 8 hours a day. So many of the employees of the county put in way more than just 8 hours. Two things to note: that this did hit the intended audience, which was small businesses. Most of the businesses had 10 or fewer employees. And one thing to note as we go forward is that 93% of these businesses stated in their registration that they were currently open for business. And so that is something I want us to be aware of as we talk about what the next steps are. But I do want to say a huge thanks to your team. Again, I can't say it enough how impressed I've been with the team at the county and who you have in your purchasing department, your public works department, your fairgrounds. Outstanding commitment to this community, and they designated way more time than their typical employment contract would state. They went above and beyond, every single one of them. So thank you for designating and from leading from the top to make sure that they were available to us for this program, and they stepped up in big ways. So really wanted to thank you. And I'm going to let Tony take it from here as far as a budget review and some next steps that we see for the program.
Yep, so I just wanted to quickly review, kind of level set to where we were at last month and where we're at now. So back in June, in our initial conversation, when you guys gave us approval, that was about 1.6 million. So our actual spend right now, after the first distribution, is 1.453. So we're well under budget. And then second part is I wanted to go through some of the usage of the items and show you guys what we ordered and what we currently have left, what we used during that phase 1 distribution. So our hand sanitizer, we only used 37% of it, so we still have we have over 6,000 left for a possible round 2 that we're, just to kind of preempt you guys a little bit, that's kind of the direction we're headed with this presentation, is leaning towards a phase 2 and getting some answers from you guys. So we have enough hand sanitizer, gloves, disposable masks, plexiglass, cleaning solution. We didn't even use half of the cloth masks that we got in, so we still have 114,000 of those left. So we feel that all of these items up here we have enough of. The only one we're missing out on is the kids disposable, which we used almost 80%. We thought we ordered for those, and there ended up being a much larger demand than we really anticipated on that one. So any questions about the budget, usage, anything like that? I know you guys love my spreadsheets.
Any questions, Josh or Mary? I think we're good.
Yep.
Well, I guess
Cool.
my one question I'd have is, when I look at the current inventory, that's like when it says gloves and it says 199,000. How many boxes is that?
It's about
approximately
3,900 boxes.
Okay, because you were handing out one box per business, correct? Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
And then another part of what we're proposing here is that we had 615,000 gloves in total. We ended up going through about 400, a little over 400,000. What we'd like to do with this next round is really target that to the people that need it the most. So restaurants, bars, that sort of thing. So we kind of had a free-for-all for everybody, and of course they said if there's gloves available, we'll take them, but we'd really like those gloves, since there is a very tightened supply chain, we'd like those to be limited only to the people that need them most.
And one thing to note on the kids' disposable masks, that was a limited audience that we allowed people to select that for. So we only, you had to select that you were a daycare provider and or in youth services on the registration application to even have that as an option. So just knowing that that was the only audience and we went through that many speaks volumes to the demand for youth masks. My sense is that, especially in the summertime, parents are finding that the kids are much more comfortable in disposable masks. And so I think that if we broaden the audience, that we'll need quite a bit more. And we know that kids are with parents more now, that they're not in daycares and schools, and they're engaging parents go out and about, the kids are always with them, and the businesses need those masks then if somebody comes up without one, that they need to be able to provide it. And of course, we've got school opening and youth programs potentially going in this fall. So that's one thing to consider with the youth masks.
All right, I'm gonna go to the next slide. There we go. Okay, and I'll take this top bullet point here. Cindy, if you want to get the rest. Perfect. Okay, so my thought behind this going into it was that our first round of distribution would be to outfit all of the employees within each small business with what they needed to be successful. And I think phase 2 of distribution would kind of lend itself greatly to phase 3 of opening up our economy and accommodating as many customers as possible. So that's kind of the distinction in my mind between a phase 1 distribution of PPE and a phase 2. Is phase 1 was outfitting the internal employee. Phase 2 is now going to be outfitting the customers that frequent each business. So there's different metrics that we're going to use for that. It's perfect also because we have 1.5 million disposable face coverings that did not come in time to distribute them in the first round. So we have 1.5 million facial coverings that we have already bought. We also have Plexi that we already bought. The supply chain was so tight that we could not get them in time for that first round of distribution. So we have a lot of inventory of disposable masks and everything I showed you guys on the last slide. So should be a pretty minimal impact to run a second round.
And then addressing the second point here that we have is addressing a gap we saw from phase 1 is we base the allocation on the number of employees in a business and or nonprofit. And we knew that would create a gap, and it did, but we wanted to have certain parameters around that so we could assess the need. So what we have is a need for organizations and nonprofits that have very few employees but have a very large customer and or client base. And a couple of examples would be like Southside Senior Center, where you've got few employees, but your audience is not only large and potentially as the economy reopens more and more, but they're a very high risk population. You've also got some nonprofit providers in the space of sheltering youth, all of those that potentially have some, I wouldn't say necessarily high risk youth, but homeless shelters or whatnot that are serving some vulnerable populations. So we want to make sure that in addition, making sure this stays in the small business and nonprofit arena. So we would still keep it at 49 or fewer employees, but we add another layer and ask the business and our nonprofit what their average customer audience is per day and our client base is per day. And that we allocate supplies off of that. And then basically this round 2, then it continues the investment and commitment that from the county's perspective for both public health and economic health for the community. Let's move this along. Timeline for this program. Distribute sometime during August, September. We originally thought maybe we would try and get some time with the fairgrounds sooner than later, anticipating that potentially the fairgrounds would need us to vacate. I don't sense that is the case at this point, and I don't know, Tony, if you can address that, but I think that we have the time and the flexibility to keep our product at the fairgrounds. As a team, we talked about using this and giving some time for these businesses to have the opportunity to go through their product and then see an increase in demand again. So again, like I said, 93% of the businesses were open that use this. We need them to go through the product again to create another demand, but we also potentially want to wait and see with the numbers that they are, if businesses are not opening because of numbers, other concerns with liability, that we give it some time for our economy to open a little bit more so we have more businesses that we can serve. I was a little bit surprised that more businesses didn't use the opportunity to come get PPE that weren't open. But so that makes me wonder that they need to have a sense that they're going to be opening before they're going to take advantage of this program. So I think moving it down the road a little further is going to make a lot of sense to help capture those businesses that are going to need it as they reopen and go through their current supply. And so we had some great feedback from our team about things we would want to change, improve. And so we are going to decrease the wait times, adapt the process for registration, reduce it to 2 days. We're going to change up some things on the traffic flow and how we utilize the buildings and the parking lot at the fairgrounds. And then the other piece too is explore some potential private business partners for additional marketing and contribution opportunities. So I'd like to, just give you a heads up that I'd like to have those conversations with a few private businesses that have expressed interest. Whether or not that's something you'd like us to explore, we can definitely take your direction, whether or not you think that is appropriate. One of the ideas we had is that a private business could stand up the marketing efforts for us, buy some radio time, do some other things to help increase the audience and the marketing efforts of the program. And then Tony's going to go through the proposal for you for round 2.
All right. Perfect. So yeah, to narrow everything down and condense exactly what we're looking for direction from you guys on is, first of all, do we have your guys' commitment for the phase 2 distribution? So the county support, as well as Fair and Expo used through September if needed. So along with that, I hate to add a third caveat, but also if it is a yes, what's the timing that you guys would anticipate or prefer for the second round of distribution?
So Josh, Mary, do you either one of you want to weigh in here, or if not, I can.
I can, thank you guys for all you've done. I mean, it's pretty amazing what you've already accomplished and all of that, and helped with the safety of our community. But I think, definitely want to do phase 2 in my mind. And I think, Cindy, I think, were you saying to try to maybe time it as we look to open, or into the next, level, so that way when we get to phase 3, we those businesses, they're opening? Is that what you were kind of hoping for?
Mm-hmm. I think so. I think as we see, I want to see the maximum return on investment for the program. And I think we need to make sure that there's a demand there. And that includes basically, making sure that the businesses go through their current supply, and also that we capture more businesses as they open and engage in the economy, versus contracting that we're seeing right now a little bit, that we wait and sense when the economy is in the public safety and the numbers, testing numbers are starting to decrease again, where we feel comfortable the businesses are going to be, because we still have a lot of businesses that are, they can open according to governor, but they're not. For multiple reasons. And so I think that there's, we need to be considerate to that as well.
So I'm, I would go along with that. So thank you.
Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I mean, I'm certainly on board for a phase 2. Timing wise, I think, it's hard to know exactly what those triggers are going to be that sort of indicate, when that's going to be most impactful. Certainly we don't want to do it right now, because like Cindy said, we need to give time for these businesses to use the PPEs that they got in the first round. So, certainly there will be a delay. I think that'll have to just be a discussion we have on what exactly the best timing is. And I think there's a whole host of factors that are going to weigh into that. But yeah, I certainly think we need to do a round 2 at some point. And I think discussions will lead us to, what exactly that discussions, and also, what we're seeing throughout the community, as well as what we're hearing from the governor, is gonna dictate what the actual date is for the when we pull the trigger on phase 2. But yeah, I'm all on board with doing a second round of distributions.
Thank you. I think the other thing to keep in mind with the timing is that we can order, if you all agree that you want to move ahead with a phase 2 and invest some additional dollars that will still keep us under budget, we can stand this program up in a matter of days. We'll work on it to make sure that everything is in place, but it can be a fairly quick turnaround too. So as we can continue to stay in touch and feel like, we present back to you when we feel there's been enough time, at least 30 to 45 days for the current inventory that businesses have to go through. And also we're just keeping tabs on how we're doing as a community with the virus and our testing and the economy and what we're hearing from the governor's office. But just know that when you feel that you want to stand this effort up, it could be stood up very quickly. I believe in Tony, 7 to 10 business days, easy, maybe even 5 business days.
Yep.
So I was out this weekend and visited a variety of different stores, and for the most part, everybody was wearing their mask. I was very impressed. I mean, from the standpoint of employees as well as customers. There were a couple stores where I was at where people would walk up and not have a mask, and the employees would say, "I'm sorry, you can't come in." And then the customer would ask for a mask, and then they would give them so that they could come in. In one store, they had run out of the mask, and so they were turning customers away. And so when we talk about phase 2, also extending to the customers, I think that's dead on. I think for some of these retailers, if they got the employees covered, you still want to be able to bring the customer in and stuff. And so I guess I'm not only supportive of phase 2, I'm actually very supportive of a phase 3. And here's my thinking. We are in the first part of August. Hopefully, if the numbers start to transition here, we'll be putting push in to get to phase 3. And if we are in a position to where the numbers are in good shape, then that makes going to phase 3 a lot more realistic. But if the numbers haven't changed, then I think we need to have a push to get the numbers better. And if that's broadening up the distribution of the PPE, specifically the mask and stuff, so that we can get to phase 3, then I think that's something that we ought to strategically be thinking about. And then the phase 3 of our PPE program could be lined up with the back to school effort and what's going to be happening with that, because there are going to be a lot more people that are going to be out with the kids, spreading germs and doing all that kind of fun stuff. So I guess I'd throw that out for your consideration and say, should we think about doing something in the first part of August, and with the expectation that we'll come back in first part of September with phase 3 distribution? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, and Al, that's really in line with our presentation. And if you look at this other spreadsheet down here, what we're asking for is $64,000 in hard costs to run this program, as well as, like you said, the back to school effort. We're asking for, that's the only PPE we're asking for. It's $125,000, a very conservative number at 40 cents each. That's our largest cost.
Yeah, I guess to get you to a third round of distribution, you're not going to be able to do that, I don't think, in the current budget. So I'd be in favor of increasing the budget to cover a third round, to be able to make sure that I'd rather have product out there that keeps us safe than to try and squeeze the budget to the point where it's counterproductive to what we want to do, which is drive the economy. So somebody was going to comment and I cut you off. I apologize.
One thing we can address too, what I anticipate with going through is, you notice that on the hand sanitizer and the cleaner, we went through about not even a third of the product. Our audience will increase and our distribution will increase somewhat with phase 2 because of the changing guidelines, but I still anticipate us having a leftover inventory of at least 20% on the hand sanitizer and the cleaner for a phase 3. So we were either going to, as we move closer to actually pulling the gear to do a phase 2 on this distribution, asking you what your thoughts are is, do we increase the allocation of that extra inventory, or do we set it aside for phase 3 and focus it more on the schools and the education as we move into the fall with school? So that could lend very well to a phase 3 where you're focused on education and youth activities as we go into the fall. And we use that surplus inventory of those 2 products. And again, like we learned from phase 1, what's in high demand, what do we need more of? We'll learn that again through phase 2 as it changes. And we can then stand up an opportunity to order what product makes sense for what the community needs in addition to those basic things, which is the hand clean, the sanitizer and the cleaner.
Okay. Mary, Josh, your thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think, I mean, everything that's been said today, I think I'm in agreement with. Al, you're spot on. We need a phase. We need I don't want to use the term phase. Round 3. We'll need a round
There
2.
we go.
Round
There we go.
No, absolutely. I think like you were saying, the demand is really going to ramp up come September when kids start going back to school. And so, yeah, no, I'm on board. Whenever we have to make that purchase, I mean, as to get the timing right, as far as production and delivery, I'll let I'll let Tony and Cindy kind of guide that on what the timing is. But yeah, I agree with you, Al. Round 2 and a round 3, I think, will definitely be needed.
Yeah. Mary?
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And, if we need to spend more, we can, certainly, we need to reserve, because this is going to be going on for a long time. I mean, I still keep hearing that, this is a spike right now, but I mean, the real one's going to come in, late October, early November. I mean, that's when we're going to see, when the flu season starts, another spike. I mean, that's consistent from all the doctors that I've been talking to, so we're going to be continuing to do this, I think, to provide that help and relief for our businesses and keeping the community safe.
Okay.
We'll take your direction. Right now we're under budget. If you approve a round 2, we're still under the budget by a couple $100,000, 180 or so. What we can do then is come to you and present a proposal for a round 3 closer to, in a couple of weeks. I don't anticipate it being nearly the ask that we did for round 1. So I think even Tony, in general, I think we'd probably do somewhere around, it just would depend on the product, but I can't imagine it would be more than a couple $100,000, because we'd still have inventory of the cleaner and the hand sanitizer.
Yeah, I think we really need to have the conversation about round 3 after round 2 is complete, because we have a partial picture of demand for our round 1 of distribution, and we'll get an even better picture after round 2. So I think if you guys are all on board for round 2, really all we need at this point is, Cindy, if you could go to the last slide, just authorization to order 125,000 children's disposable masks. And then I included all of our hard costs down here to run a second event. So that's really what we need to start marching forward to get to this round 2 of distribution.
Okay. So Josh, you want to give us a motion?
Sure, absolutely. Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the expenditure and distribution of 64,000, I'm going to say actually authorize the expenditure of up to $65,000 of CARES funds for the purchase of PPEs and hard costs and ongoing security costs for a second round of the distribution for small businesses as presented by Tony and Cindy.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Before we take a vote, one of the other things I was doing when I was out was price checking. And Tony, you've done a hell of a job. Congratulations. I mean, the pricing that you've gotten on this stuff is anywhere from 35 to 50% below anything that any of these businesses can get off the market. So great job, Tony, for your work. So with that,
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it.
You bet. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Go forth and do great things.
Perfect. Thank you, guys.
I want to throw out one other thing. During the distribution, I don't remember which local news station it was, but they were on scene and they were interviewing some of the business owners as they drove through at the fairgrounds, and there was a woman they spoke with, and just the way she was so thankful to receive the the items that she got. She said, you know, I've looked, these are so hard to find, or if you can find them, the price is so expensive. It said, this really helps my business. And I mean, it's just hearing her say that, it's like, that's what this is about. This is about keeping people safe and helping our small businesses. So you guys have hit a home run. Thank you for everything you're doing.
Oh, thank you all for your commitment to the community. This is tremendous. Thank you.
Yep, we really appreciate it. And yeah, we got the same feedback, and that's what's driving all of us to work this event and keep going. So we're excited.
Okay, so next item is Alicia. Is she, you want to go ahead and see if we can get a full screen there? Oh, look up there. We got the whole family on there. All
The
right.
family's here, Commissioner.
All right. So we are going to talk about CARES funding. And I'm assuming that this is going to be about the grant program, but I could be wrong. So Alicia, the floor is yours, or the screen is yours.
Well, thank you, and you are not wrong. We're here to talk with you about the guidelines and parameters for the small business and nonprofit grant program. First, I want to also thank you for the continued investment in PPE, and a kudos to Cindy and Tony. It's been incredible. And Josh, to your comments just a minute ago, I just picked up another note this weekend that was mailed from a small dentistry practice with the same kinds of things. And it makes me think about I want to make sure we're sharing those with all of you. I think that we've been hearing from small businesses throughout the region with those same types of stories, and how critical it is to their ability to continue to serve their customers. So thank you for that continued investment and support of the PPE effort. So we sent over this morning the details we were going to talk through with you today on the parameters for both the small business and nonprofit grant program. The team that's been working on all of these proposals is on the call again today. What we'll do is kind of step through both the overarching considerations, parameters that we're recommending for eligibility for small business, parameters that we're recommending for eligibility for nonprofits, and then a little bit around the kind of timeline and process and the kind of the next steps, so that we're continue to have all of that conversation with you as we move forward. So, and it looks like Cindy, are you running the? Thank you. Yes. Cindy's going to run. I'm going to kick off and hand it over to Lance, and then Cindy will wrap up. And just a note also that we'll continue to keep Cindy on board as our business recovery manager. And so she'll be day-to-day point and lead on the management of the grant program as well as we move forward. And you'll see that we've aligned the overarching with the PPE distribution as well, calling it Open Together Small Business and Nonprofit Grant Program. We just think that this continued partnership between GSI and the county helps with our nonprofits and small businesses to identify that this is all a piece of how we're continuing to invest dollars into their business recovery here in the region. So grant details on the next slide. As you know, GSI will be administering this process throughout. From applications to review and then award designation. We've had a couple of great conversations with Carrie as we work through the back end of things. We're recommending that the awards will range between $2,500 to $10,000, and we'll talk about those two pieces here on a couple of future slides. Target date, we had a long conversation, and Cindy will talk through the specifics of the kind of timeline. But our goal is that organizations are receiving funding by Labor Day. So ambitious, but we believe we can do that if we do the work that we need to be doing to be organized and get the process rolling. And then, so you are all comfortable, back to my comment of working with Carrie, we're making sure that we're adhering to all the grant policies and procedures, and that'll be shared with the county as we move forward. So first, our recommendation on small business program eligibility. Let Cindy go to the next slide. We're recommending that businesses must have their primary operations in Spokane County, and that they have fewer than 50 employees or the equivalent FTE. We're recommending that they've been established and operating prior to July 1st of 2019 and have not permanently ceased operations. that they're in good standing with the Washington State Secretary of State and the Department of Labor and Industries. And they must be able to demonstrate their expenditures and losses due to the COVID-19 public health emergency between March 1st and December 31st of 2020. We are recommending that independently owned franchises would be eligible. And obviously that all supporting documentation would be must be provided for qualifying expenditures and losses based upon the U.S. Treasury Department guidelines. From a prioritization of funding, we're recommending that we prioritize businesses that were forced to close, especially those with sustained closures due to COVID-19 and related government mandates. We're recommending that businesses that have absorbed job and revenue loss due to government mandated closure be prioritized, and that the organizations that have not been eligible for other federal, state, or local emergency funding be prioritized. And that then we would give additional considerations to multi-ethnic, women, veteran, and tribal-owned businesses, and consideration to businesses that have a plan demonstrating the economic and community impact from the grant award funding. And then, oh, go ahead. Yep.
Quick question for you. Didn't the tribes receive a direct distribution of CARES funding?
The tribes have, but that doesn't mean that the tribal-owned businesses. So we have a number of businesses that are quote unquote tribal owned, but that doesn't mean that they are part of the tribes through their operations received it, but not other tribal designated. So you can be a tribally owned business designation, but not be part of the their tribal operations, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
I believe, and I'm trying to remember here, I think we had 3 of those types of businesses that were awarded during the commerce funding as an example. There's a separate technical assistance partner, et cetera.
Okay.
Let's see, and then the last piece on the small business side would be what are the eligible expenses that they would be in consideration for. So again, they must be able to demonstrate that they've experienced or are anticipating that they'll experience that financial loss due to COVID-19. And that then the grants would be able to provide working capital for small businesses to support payroll, rent, utilities, taxes, accounts payable, debt services, and other expenses related to shifts in their operations in order for them to retain their existing business, retain current employees, or retain their business viability for future reemployment. And then also noted, we thought it's important what kinds of expenses are not eligible. So those would include paying bonuses, commissions, dividends, or salary increases to owners or investors. So I'll pause there for a second and kind of a preference to the commissioners if you want us to go through all of the eligibility pieces for both sides first and then come back, or I can pause for questions here as well.
So questions for Mary or Josh? So one question I have for you, when you talk about eligible expenses, the very bottom one says funds may not be used to pay bonuses, commissions, dividends, or salaries. It's my understanding, in fact, even in Idaho, they've now putting into place, I think applications go in this week for a incentive check to get people to get off of unemployment, because with the stimulus checks they're getting, they're actually making more money by not going to work than they are by going back to work and stuff. So to trying to counterbalance that, the state has got a program where they're actually going to give businesses a check to get them off of unemployment. So, but as I read that last criteria there, we would not allow for that kind of an expenditure based upon this program. Is that right? Or am I not reading that right?
This piece was put in intended more toward your owners, investors of a business, not necessarily employees. We did decide as a team to present to you that these funds may be used for payroll. And so a business could use these funds to, like you said, instead of keeping employees on standby or unemployed basically, and keeping them on the state's unemployment payroll, that they could use these funds that you're granting to them to then basically re-employ them and get them back on their own payroll.
Okay, thank you. All right, so the floor is back to you, Alicia.
Okay. Then we'll go ahead. I'm going to hand it off to Lance to talk about the nonprofit program eligibility.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. Thanks for having us. So on the nonprofit side, obviously we did set up a little bit different criteria because of the different style of business that nonprofits often find themselves in. So we are recommending that the nonprofit program eligibility limited to active 501c3 registered nonprofits here in Spokane County. They again must have been established and operating prior to July 1, 2019 and have not permanently ceased operations during that time. They are also in good standing with the Washington State's Secretary of State and Department of Labor and Industries. They must also demonstrate that they had expenditure or losses due to the COVID-19 public health emergency between March 1, 2020 and December 31st, 2020. We would require supporting documentation to be provided for those qualified losses based on the U.S. Treasury Department guidelines that have been out. Go ahead and go to the next slide there, Cindy. Organizations with an annual operating budget or contributed revenue above $50,000 would be one of the priorities for funding. Nonprofit organizations that mitigate the critical public health and economic impacts due to the COVID-19 crisis for residents here in Spokane County who rely on those organizations for critical services. That would include things like, but not limited to, organizations providing essential human services. Also prioritized would be nonprofit organizations that contribute to economic, cultural, and civic vitality. This would include, but is not limited to, arts organizations, nonprofit community development corporations, economic development organizations, technical assistance providers, organizations that provide safe outdoor places for people to recreate, community-based organizations that deliver timely and sometimes life-saving information about COVID-19, as well as civic organizations that unite people across differences to find solutions. And then last priority would be coalitions, networks, and collaboratives of nonprofit organizations that maximize the cooperation impact and impact the speed of the state's distribution of funds that meet urgent needs. And I believe the next is our exclusions. So the exclusion criteria would be organizations receiving county allocated CARES dollars under other programs. And we had additional conversation on that point this morning. And really it comes back to rent assistance is the big one that we see coming down the pipeline. So that may require some additional conversation as we finalize that category there. Cindy, I think you popped down or back up a slide if you could go to the next one. There we go. Obviously, for-profit entities would not qualify in this category. Organizations located outside of Spokane County, K through 12 schools, including charter, public, and private schools, both colleges and universities, hospitals, medical research, healthcare entities that bill for clinical treatment, and then professional societies and associations, grant-making foundations and charitable trusts, fundraising, membership development, and single support organizations. So a single support organization is something like a Friends of the Library type of program. So designated fundraising organization with only one beneficiary there. Fraternal organizations, and then churches, with the exception of churches with specific programs that direct service offered to the general public there. And so let's see the next one. Eligible expenses for nonprofits would be organizations must demonstrate that they have experienced or anticipate that they will experience financial loss due to COVID-19 to qualify for the grant. This would include something like the cancellation of a fundraising event in that case with the nonprofit. The grants would provide working capital for the nonprofits to support both payroll, rent, utilities, taxes, accounts payable, debt services, and expenses related to the shifts in operations in order to retain operations, current employees for operational viability for the future reemployment of their staff. Funds may not be utilized to pay bonuses, reimbursement for board-related expenses. So again, kind of similar to the for-profit side there for the bonus structure. We're eliminating that as well as board-related expenses. And I think that's it for us on the nonprofit side. Open to questions there. And then otherwise, I'd turn it back over to Cindy to talk a little more about how we intend to facilitate the programming on this.
Okay, Mary, Josh, any questions for either Cindy or Lance or Alicia?
On your first slide for the nonprofits, it did say 501c3s, correct? Is it just limited to the C3s?
That's correct, Commissioner. Okay.
All right.
Yes. And are there any questions? I'll go ahead and address some process around how we move forward with this. I want to make sure that we answer any questions from you commissioners about the small business or the nonprofit before we move on.
Looks like we're good. Go ahead.
Okay, I do want to address that one thing I did not include that we discussed this morning was, yes, addressing some of those small businesses and nonprofits that may be operating out of their primary residence with the money and the funds that you're receiving for rental assistance. But we all talked about that this morning, that could create where you have this double dip factor. And so we will be working to put in an exclusion for primary residence mortgage payments with these grant funds. And so that can make sure that those business owners or mortgage holders can work through the other program for rent assistance in that capacity, but not through this small business grant program. So we'll be addressing that. Looking ahead, as far as timeline, I want to thank Alicia and everybody that's been working with you on this program to task me with leading this again, another program, and I'm thrilled to do it. I'm very excited. I think our small business community is already, we're receiving a lot of positive feedback about your investment in this community at such a high level. This is a major investment. We want to make sure that, again, the return on investment is as high as it can be. So what I wanted to go back to is some of these details. The target date for us, we really want to get these funds out to the businesses as quickly as possible. So with that in mind, as far as the timeline, we want to have it quick, but we also want to make sure that this process is transparent, that it's very inclusive. We have an equity lens when we are considering those businesses that need it the most, that we also make sure that we are talking about geographical diversity with where your funds and the taxpayer funds are going and to help support these small businesses. The process that I will begin with immediately after this meeting is making sure that we put together a committee. We've got a committee to start looking at the application itself, review of those parameters. We're working with Carrie, with the county, of course, on the work scope that we'll have between GSI and the county for this program. We also want to make sure that we look at utilizing and leveraging all of our community resources to help us do this in a timely fashion. And so it is also for me to go and assess where the best places are for us to get the tools that we need to do this and stand this up quickly. That we also ask our partners that have more experience in grant distribution and assessment of need in the process to help us in our own process and how we stand this up. Because this is, again, a phenomenal program for the community, but it's also something with a lot of risk that if it's not done well, that we want to make sure we mitigate as many risks as possible. And so we will, and I will be having quite a robust process to make sure that we minimize that as well, and that the funds go to those in most need. And then we did, like we said, the awards will range from 2,500 up to 10,000, allowing the committee to allocate out funds as needed. Also, that gives us the ability to increase the number of businesses that are receiving funds from this program as well. And so with that, I want to open it up to questions about the process, how we're going to manage that. If you have any questions about those steps, love to be able to answer those.
One question for you, Cindy and Alicia. Have you given any thought to a split on the 10 million, so much for nonprofits, so much for profits, or are you going to allow the demand to drive wherever that number should be?
I'll do a quick answer and let Alicia pipe in. We have not, intentionally, we did not set a limit yet. We figured that we would see what the applications, what that audience looks like and what the community's demand looks like first. But I'll give that to Alicia and or Lance to answer that question.
No, we haven't. We've had some kind of working conversations about it, but want to be careful not to set a perceived set of cap. But knowing that it'll be a percentage of the funds, or a minimum dollar amount. So they're all working, and certainly if the commissioners have thoughts on that, we would welcome that. But one of the pieces we're wanting to make sure we do is that although the processes are going to be fairly parallel, there's going to be a lot of the same information, and so wanting to make sure that we're able to assess the overall need before we put a cap on how much is allocated to one pool versus the other.
Okay. Any other questions, either Josh or Mary? Okay, so continue on, Alicia.
Perfect. Thank you. Well, we'll get to work. We don't have any, I don't know if you need to take any formal, if the commissioners need to take any formal action or not, but otherwise, thank you. This is what we needed. And the team we're going to shift gears from parameters to putting it to work. And I don't know that Cindy totally, we have a working date. We're hoping probably about 10 days from now, Cindy, to be able to open the application process. So that's kind of our next goal, is to shift to make sure we get the applications up, get the system in place, and be able to open up so we can begin that commitment to our timeline of disbursement of, at least beginning of disbursement of funds by Labor Day.
Yes, what I didn't address, and thank you, Alicia, for reminding me too, is yes, by the end of next week, we hope to have the application live, and that we have by mid-August, that we are reviewing, well, even the second week of August, that we're starting to review applications and put those parameters in place and meet with our grants committee review team and have that process in place. So we'll have a rolling opportunity to look at applications. We do anticipate that we will receive, the Commerce grants were less than 10 employees and did not include nonprofits. And we received over 1,850 applications for that program. So we anticipate that this could, we were trying to figure out a way to make sure that we broadened the scope and made sure we were addressing need in the community, but how do we also make this manageable? Because as we put parameters in, it also makes sense to put in the correct parameters to limit the audience that really needs it the most too. So we'll be doing that, but we do anticipate receiving well over 2,000 applications for this program, maybe even 2,500 to 3,000.
Very good. So I am not under the impression that we need to do any other authorization. I mean, if there's any input that the commissioners would like to have on the criteria, but that didn't seem to be much debate when we went through it. So other than that, I mean, we've already authorized the funding and everything like that. So it's just go forth and do great things.
We'll just be incorporating a lot of this, Commissioner, in the statement of work. We probably can get the contract to GSI probably tomorrow or Wednesday at the latest. So we'll be moving forward.
Great. Thank you, Carrie. All right, let's go ahead, Mary.
I have a comment. So one question I have is kind of what you're going to do to announce, to seek those grantees, people that are going to apply. Do you have a marketing, or is it just, what do you anticipate to do for that piece of it?
We're going to utilize some of the strengths that we had in the PPE program. With this, what we saw worked. We've got an internal team at GSI that is willing. We're going to use the branding, this Open Together branding as well, to create some of our social media templates. We'll also be utilizing press releases, working with the county like we did with the PPE program, And what we also found was very successful is, individually through Kara and her marketing team at GSI, through Jared here with the county, and some others, and myself and Alicia, is really reaching out to media partners and to get them on board and to help us spread the message. This has been a tremendous community effort. We have spent very little dollars, if any, in marketing, and we have found partners amongst this community willing to donate their resources to help get the word out. So we will be leaning heavily on that. We'll be emailing. We have gathered quite an email list because of some of the programs that we've put together, which will enable us to email directly to, again, more than, at this point, we've got between 300 and 3,500 businesses easily that we can email directly about this program and utilize other partners, community organizations, trade associations, the city of Spokane and all the other municipalities to get the word out, neighborhood districts and other business organizations. So we'll be utilizing those communication channels intensely in the next one, starting tomorrow through the next couple of weeks as well.
Thank you. And I just want to say, I think this is great. I think, I'm already hearing people talk about it. So, so it's very exciting. So thank you.
Fabulous. Give a great shout out to the marketing team already. Kara and her team in the county that have put out the press release and worked on that already. It's getting good traction, and we'll just continue to utilize that.
Yeah. And I was just going to add, I think we're conversations with Lance and Toby and others around how do we want to ensure we're getting this into each each of those businesses in each of the small communities throughout the geography of the county as well. And that's such an important target. So how do we, that on the ground push, who are the partners, information to the Deer Park Chamber, et cetera, that we're making sure that any business throughout the county that meets those basic eligibility requirements and nonprofits will get at least access to the information and the opportunity to apply. And so a lot of that kind of outreach and communication will be critical in the early days of that process.
And then Commissioner Cooney, we do plan to do several FAQ webinar series here on the grant itself to help explain it to the businesses in the community. So utilizing those weekly meetings that the various leaders have all been doing so far, and putting those to use over the next couple of weeks to get the detailed information out so that we can help businesses through the application process as smoothly as possible.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all very much for your investment in this work and for your partnership, and much more ahead. Happy Monday.
Very good. Thanks very much to the team, Alicia and everybody else.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next item on our agenda is a executive session with Chad Coles. It's supposed to be at 10:15.
I've got one at 10 o'clock. Agenda item.
Okay.
Mine.
Oh, okay. I see that. All right.
My executive session will last a half hour. So
Okay. So, John, you're up.
Yes, sir. Good morning, commissioners. I'm here on behalf of Tim Fitzgerald and Judge Smith. And I don't know if we've got that 2-page presentation that we sent out to our commissioner. Here we go. 2 or 3 weeks ago, Maggie Yates compiled a lot of our county law and justice CARES Act requests. Oh, hey, Tim, you're here. And it totaled about $8.4 million of total requests. Wide variety of requests from hardware, software, hazard pay. 2 of the requests, though, from Tim, who's here, and Judge Smith, were for a couple individuals. And Tim, maybe you can just once again brief the board. The ask for you, commissioners, is going to be up to $215,000 for 2 individuals. The first one, Tim, if you could just once again describe the IT business analyst.
I will. Hey, thank you. So thank you, commissioners, for having me real quick.
Come on up.
Yeah.
Come on up.
All right. I'll just go listen. I'm going to let you do the talking.
And I could.
Just real quick, the COVID-19 problem has demonstrated for us electronic filing capability. We need that. Many of the counties big counties like us that have the workflow that we have are in the same boat. And they're all trying to do the same thing. Electronic filing is the way of the future. My office has been open since day one, you know that. And the Supreme Court orders were very clear. You must provide options for people to file, not just in person, not just by mail, not just by drop boxes, but electronically. And in the Supreme Court Chief Justice's orders, it states that clearly. We provided all those options, so we're in pretty good stead. But we need to improve that, and we need to get to an electronic filing system for the county. Understanding the CARES Act rules, the money has to be spent by 31 December. Yep. So we really don't have time to go through an RFP process, which would be great, but we don't have the time to bring in vendors and have them brief and people analyze it and do all that in the next 4 or 5 months. So our idea was to bring in a business analyst, a person who's an expert in electronic systems. And that person would be in Becky Gerhardt's department. He or she would learn our systems. And once they learn our systems, they would look out at the market and find what's the best system out there that we can integrate into our system and implement. And then they would present, I know the commissioners that they need to have this, he or she would present our charters like we normally do, a plan and the cost and the budget and the maintenance and the annual expenses so they can have a clear picture of what we're looking at all the way down the road if we get a system put together. I'm hoping a business analyst that shows up can evaluate in 90 days and come back to the board with a recommendation of a system to purchase by sometime November, giving you another 60 days to analyze and look at purchasing a system and getting Spokane in the top 3 or 4 in the entire state electronically. And then the last line says it all. Everybody endorses this. These people have actually verbally committed to fully support this request. So that's our justice team requesting.
Yeah, just iterating, it's a temporary position, and the
Yes.
request through Tim is up to $89,000 for this IT business analyst.
That's the high end. I think it starts at
Yeah, up to-
66,000. So
up to.
whatever the contract is written.
Any questions for Tim on this temporary IT business analyst request?
Yeah, Mary?
So Tim, is this person going to be an employee or is it a contract employee, person? Because it seems like, we're less than 6 months till the end of the year. That is this something that we could just contract with somebody to do this?
Exactly.
And that's a great question. I would probably defer to HR and purchasing on how they think the best way to do this. We could pay, there's a couple ways to do it. You could do what Tyler Contracting does. You pay the person up front for a year's salary, which is what this is, and then they work for a full year, but they get their salary up front. It's up to them to maintain it for a full year. Or we could hire them for just 6 months and say you have 6 months to complete this project, and then when you're done, you're done. It could be multiple options on how people take a look at what's best for the county to do that.
I just saw Carrie's ears perk up that I think it's like expenses through the end of the year. So I mean, so we can't pre-purchase for next year.
Okay. Right. So it'd be like, help me out, Gary. Temporary, for like 6 months.
Temporary for 6 months.
So that's what and I'm hoping in 90 days they could easily, I say easily, but I don't know. That's why I'm asking for an expert. Come up with a decision what the best program is.
Right. And so that's why I think, as a temporary or as a contract, with somebody who does this, that's what I would recommend. I think that'd be better than trying to bring somebody on, and do benefits and all that, because there's a lot of contract employees that do this type of work. So, so I don't know. So that's my recommendation, but I'm happy to approve getting a business analyst in, but I think as a contract, it's better than bringing them on as an employee. And I'll probably be saying the same thing with the commissioners. Can we do a pro tem versus a full-on commissioner?
Yeah, that works. I mean, it serves a need.
Yeah, I'm tracking with what Commissioner CUNY's saying, and I know what you're getting at, and I think you're spot on. I think if we bring somebody on, even as if we call them temporary today, I can see come December, if this person's going to be put in IT is going to say, well, this person's been such a benefit to have in our department. We'd like to make this position permanent. So I think a contract is the way to go. I don't think we want to make this person an FTE. So, I mean, whatever however we make that happen, I think that's the way to go.
Okay. Very good. So do you want us to take both of these together or separately, John?
Probably separately,
Okay.
because you may want one and not the other.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you.
So, well, just sit tight. So Josh, it sounds like we're all three in support of this. Do you want to go ahead and make a motion to authorize it?
Sure. How would I make this motion to make sure that it incorporates sort of our concerns with a contract rather than a full-time employee based on the, I want to make sure that that's there as part of the record,
Yeah,
based on what Commissioner CUNY and I said.
Yeah, just go ahead and make it as part of the motion, or you can tie the motion back to the minutes for the meeting that clearly talk about that. Either way.
All right. So if we do it that way, is 89,000 still the cap?
Right.
Or do we feel that that's too high now?
I wouldn't know what a contractor would cost, unfortunately.
I keep the cap there just because you don't know what he's going to negotiate. He can negotiate a lower amount, but that gives him flexibility to know what's out there, because it's going to be hard to find a contractor right now because everyone's doing the same thing.
Can I make a suggestion as well?
Yeah, please.
What I'd really like, like if you look at the other one, I think we need, I'm trying to use these as support when it comes to auditors.
Yep.
You really need to set out in here why this is really COVID related. Like, because we're trying to reduce the public coming in or whatever. I don't think it really states it, Tim, in this document. If we could do a little bit more, just, I mean, if you kind of look at the district court's request about why we're doing this, why it's necessary related to COVID, that we're trying to reduce the number of public coming in, or something along those lines. I really think it needs to be a little bit more clearly stated.
Okay.
You do that.
Do you want that before we take an action on it, or just
No,
okay?
I think if we just
Acknowledge that.
Acknowledge it in there that I've got some, backup when the auditor's coming about why we're doing that. I think we'll be okay.
Okay. So are you comfortable with that, Josh?
Sure. Yep.
Sorry.
So you got the floor.
All right, Mr. Chair, move to approve and authorize the dispersion of up to $89,000 of CARES Act dollars for a business analyst to be hired on a contract basis to assist the clerk's office in Superior Court with an IT online filing system to reduce the number of folks present in the courthouse to assist with social distancing as related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
I'll second that.
Very well said, Mr. Kearns. Almost like you've done this before. All right, so all those in favor of the motion as stated, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Let the record reflect the motion passed unanimously. Dan.
Thank you, commissioners.
Very
the next
welcome.
request comes from, you can go to.
Thank you.
Say bye, Tim.
Bye.
The second request was shared with you, once again, as part of Maggie Yates's summary, but it comes from Judge Smith, our presiding judge in district court. And the request is for a temporary court commissioner for up to $126,000. And if you read the reasoning here from Judge Smith, as we bring back our trials, our juries, what Judge Smith is wanting to do is use predominantly his current judges to do criminal matters. And what he'd like this, with your approval, this temporary court commissioner to do is the civil work on behalf of the district court.
Yeah, I think so. In my conversations with the judge, this has to do with clearing out the backlog of cases that was created by the mandatory shutdown for COVID-19. And that's the connection.
It is.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions, either Josh or Mary?
I guess
Yes.
yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, since we're into July already, is 126,000 needed? I mean, we're this far into the year. That seems like a really high dollar amount for one person.
Well, would it be for one person or would it also be for the clerk as well?
I don't know.
Yeah, so I think it's covering the cost for both the commissioner and the clerk for the court, because you need both of them to be able to administer the court.
Okay.
So I guess my question is do we need an actual full court commissioner? Can we use like a pro tem and have the other court commissioners already, kind of rearrange things and, get a temporary person in that way that again isn't an actual employee during this, 5 months?
Commissioners, I think it's up to the 126. When these were put in, I think it was put in a couple of months ago. So it may not be that high, but if we just had a cap again, like for even, Tim's request, maybe that would cover it. The concern I would have is if we had staff that were currently in budget, you couldn't use it to cover their staff time because they're part of our budget. But maybe you just put it up to and cap it at the 126, and it may not be that much. You can follow up with John Witter and find out how much it's going to be, and then come back. But we could just leave it at up to 126 if that would make you feel more comfortable.
And my understanding is the reason why they're looking for the court commissioner is because adjudicating civil cases requires a little bit more legal experience and authority than the pro tems do when they're administering misdemeanors as such. So I think they're looking to cover that skill set that they otherwise wouldn't be able to get with the pro tems. That's my understanding anyway.
Yeah, my gut would tell me that they would say this adds the stability that they know the court commissioner is going to be there. The pro tems, lots of time, I mean, they're practicing attorneys that have their own caseloads. And, as we know, they just about, every other year, they come in and say that we need to raise the pay for our pro tems as well to attract people to actually show up. So.
Okay.
So you comfortable making the motion, Josh?
Yep. Mr. Chair, I move to authorize the dispersion of CARES Act dollars up to $126,000 for district court to provide for the cost of a judge, a court commissioner to assist with the backlog of cases related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
And this will just be through the end of the year.
Oh, yes, through the end of the year, because we can't spend any of the money beyond that. So yes, till the end of the year.
I'll second that.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, let the record reflect motion passed unanimously.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay, so now we're going to go into executive session.
I think they might be.
Yeah.